welcome to the SLT podcast. This is a very, very special edition. This is actually an anniversary edition. This is our 1 year anniversary edition. And for that, we had to bring in the guest who we've probably referred to the most in this entire podcast. Yeah, we've it's secretly like we've looked at each other and we know who we're talking about. Yes, we may have even given his code name. We may have referred. You may have heard us talk about somebody called GPH.
Man, like.
So I'm going to introduce myself, Ziggy Moore Education, all that good stuff. I'm going to introduce our lovely hostess who's here.
Rena Johnson.
Miss Rena Johnson, Senducation, all that stuff. And for our anniversary edition, the one, the only.
Extraordinaire.
Yes, GPH, Mr. Gary Phillips.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
It's a real pleasure.
Welcome.
Yes. We if you can tell, because I can tell Rena's looking at me. I am slightly nervous, yeah. Because although it's been well over a decade, I feel like I'll tell you what I feel like. If you've ever watched kind of football podcasts, yeah, when Alex Ferguson is with the class of '92, see like your Gary Nevilles and so on and so forth. This is our equivalent to Alex Ferguson in the room. So if I'm a bit nervous, if Rena's a bit quiet, more than normal, you know why. But let's introduce our guest, because they're thinking like, why is he like this? Why is he like this? So, Mr. Phillips, we worked together, and you were the head teacher of a South London comprehensive school, Lillian Baylis, from which years to which years?
From 99 to 2021.
Okay, so that was a serious, 12, 13-year run?
22 years.
Where's my maths? Sorry.
Going back to football, the same as Arsene Wenger.
The same as Arsene Wenger.
Very good.
All right, so from 1999 to 2021. Now, I remember when, I'm going to tell you the truth, I had no intention of working at Lillian Baylis. It was my third choice backup. Yeah. No, let me just start this off. It was my third choice for two reasons. One, because it was in South London and I'm from North London.
Yeah.
And you know when you're just sending off applications, and I think I had an interview on Tuesday and then I had an interview on Thursday. And my mum said to me, go along to this interview for some practice. Yeah. Oh my gosh, South London. And then I told my dad or my uncle, and I say, oh, what school is it? And I said, oh, it's Lillian Baylis. Never heard of it. They were like, Lillian Baylis?
Yeah, because they were south of the river, weren't they?
They were south. So could you, before I carry on the story, could you give us some context? People from Brixton, the Brixton area, Kennington, they will know, Stockwell, they will know.
Yeah.
I had no clue. When I said to my South London family, Lillian Baylis, I might as well have said Wandsworth Prison or something like that. So
that's a bit harsh. I think.
Give us some context of what Lillian Baylis, or the history of Lillian Baylis, or Lillian Baylis when you arrived there in the 90s.
In a way, the kind of bigger histories tells you more, which was it came out of in the late 1800s and early 1900s, schools for the poor, the London Schools Board. And then over time, schools were amalgamated and new schools were built out of the older schools. But it only ever offered education up to the compulsory age, so to 11, to 14, and then eventually to 16. And it was always thought that when you got to 16, you would go off into an apprenticeship or you go to technical college. And so when the new, I suppose it failed its inspection in the mid-90s, but one of the things which was so striking was that most of the other schools, children could progress on to 19 and then go off to university on apprenticeships. Okay. But this perception was that this community, this North Lambeth community, that wouldn't be an aspiration for them. And so I think that's one of the reasons why it came to fail its inspection, if you think back to the mid to late 90s, was this perception both of the community and of the people who funded schools in that area, that this was all that this community deserved, needed, and was appropriate. And so raising
Basic
that
education.
aspiration for everybody, not just inside the school, and letting everybody know that this school was a place from which you could go to a great apprenticeship, you could go to a great technical college, you could go off to Oxford and do maths, as was the case. That's what was possible.
Okay. So, in essence, when you would have arrived, it would have had extremely low aspirations.
It had low aspiration. It failed its inspection because of the low aspirations of the community and within the school, but not of the parents, let's forget real, and not of the children within the school. But unless you can actually start to kind of meet the aspirations that people have when they come in, sometimes they fall rather than get brought up. And I think that was the problem. Attendance was at 84%, I remember. Suspensions were running at roughly, I think about one a day on a roll of 450 children. The school was undersubscribed. It was only half full.
Yes, I remember that.
Lack of choice for children at 14, and at 16, an expectation that they would go somewhere else, that this school couldn't meet their needs.
Oh, wow. So,
and 2% 5A to Cs without English and maths.
That's like those are PRU numbers. Those are current PRU numbers. Where,
got you.
Yeah. So, okay. All right.
And it's funny you should mention AP or the PRU, because just after I got there, the outgoing head needed to wanted to bump up numbers in order to increase funding.
Yeah.
And as you know, numbers drive funding. And so they admitted 24, I remember the children from the local PRU on block with very little support apart from one person who came over to support 1 or 2 days a week. And of course, that completely upset any equilibrium the school had and didn't do these kids a tremendous favour. Some of them went on and prospered. Some of them, unfortunately, returned to the AP. But yes, so it had that kind of feel about it for a while.
It was, where was it located at the time?
It was on Lollard Street.
Okay.
In the middle, Lollard Street. And then the long-standing plan of the councils was to knock it down to unlock the site for redevelopment and provide it with the building it deserved. And that was kind of the key to the door, really, because once it had been relocated. So it predated the government's building schools for the future.
Okay. So just to give you some context, Lollard Street, isn't that in the middle of like I don't know, because I don't know the areas. I remember I've tried to, it's a maze of different.
Yeah, it's social housing and it's a bit of a maze. But, you know, it's just people living in houses.
Yeah. But I've always found it very difficult because there are so many different ways in, different ways out. If you know the area, would that be like Black Prince, Kent?
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just off Black Prince Road, Lollard Street.
Yeah. So it's okay. So did you join Lillian Bellies in '99, or did you become the head?
I joined in '99.
Okay.
And at the end of the autumn term, the then substantive head teacher moved on following a review.
Okay.
And started from there, really.
All right. So when you would have taken over, I've heard some stories about.
I didn't say anything.
Just laughing at. I heard some stories. I didn't join until 2012, so this is way so. It's only like myth and legend and story. So I'm assuming it was a very kind of easy transition when he took over. It was all kind of like roses and like get turning things around. I'm assuming or not. What was it like your first year of headship in a school that's undersubscribed, has a shocking reputation in the borough, and you have very, very high expectations of how you're going to turn it around? What was that kind of first year like?
Well, I suppose the thing you have to remember was that everybody actually wanted the school to be better. The pupils, the staff, the parents, people in business, if you could reach out to them, and people in the council. And remember, by then we had a new Labour government, which was committed to inner city schools in particular, and to improving the lot of young people in them. So there was a tremendous kind of feeling of hope, actually. And what it struck me people wanted was a yes, a no, a straight line, a goal. It's an old Kafka quote. Probably an unfortunate person to quote, but the quote was very real. People wanted a really clear behaviour structure. 1, 2, 3, sanction, sanction, sanction. After the sanction, start to think about support, support, support. And we were very lucky to get some really strong partners from the start. So we worked very closely with Kids Company, you might recall. And so the therapeutic support for children who are struggling in school, for whatever reason, was available straight away. We were able to appoint advanced skill teachers to lead CPD, one-to-one support for teachers, and that kind of persisted as well and became a teaching and learning team within the school. And so for each of the big things which mattered, we were lucky to kind of unlock some external support because it was the right school at the right time in the right place. And to do it in a very unequivocal manner. This is what we think good teaching is like in this school. This is how we will help you do it. And we just kind of pushed and pushed and pushed. And the senior team stayed the same pretty much for 22 years, as you'll know. So that continuity of message and support, and the new people who came into it as people left to be promoted, was fantastic. And many of the middle managers stayed the same for a long period as well. And, you know, if you look at the senior team at the school now, so many of them started their teaching career there. And so kind of having those ways of doing baked into people has been really helpful, I think, in helping the school succeed. But what was it like? It was like any turnaround school. It was relentless hard work. You don't do any work during the school day in your office. You get out and about, you meet staff, you meet students, you meet parents, you try and deal with the problems. And then you go home at the end of the day and you then try and do, in inverted commas, paperwork. And I used to have a meeting with the then deputy every night on the phone from about 7 till 8 o'clock to line up the next day. But not on Friday nights.
Do you know, that's making a lot of sense, because now I really understand where I get my mentality from. in regards to I've got a question, and Rena, jump in at any time, because you were there before me, so your knowledge is going to be deeper than much more in depth than mine. But how, from a leadership perspective, because we spoke about, funny, we had a conversation, and Jordan, who was supposed to be here but couldn't make it. I remember we sat down one time and we looked at the old guard.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
And like we wrote their names down and their years of service. Yeah. And it added up to like nearly 200 years.
Yeah.
And then we looked at like the transition of the school, and it's like, how were you able to maintain? Because all right, okay, let's be honest, and you're maybe not the most. How do I say this?
No, I don't be, because my question.
All right,
I don't want you to.
How were you able to maintain such a strong team? Because it was a strong, having been all around, and you're saying strong
this,
team.
Despite my personality.
I didn't say that. I'd never say that. No way. How were you able to maintain such a strong leadership team? Anybody watching this looking from a senior leadership team, you had a strong team.
I think probably the moral purpose of why everybody was there, and their relationship with the pupils and with each other rather than with me. And the fact that there's such a strong shared moral purpose in that school, as there is in so many schools, is what kept people going. And also, I suppose, the feeling that the school was making progress. And that's what makes you feel good at work, doesn't it? That you're meeting your moral purpose, you're doing it with people that you're friends with, and things feel a bit better each week, month, year. And I think I was just very lucky by the people I appointed, and it stuck with it.
Yeah.
You know, when I look back, luck has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
I was reading this book about success, and the author talks about there are two aspects to it. You know, there's a bit of skill. You know, you're good at your stuff, but you're also incredibly lucky along the way. And you know, made me reflect on the appointments. Yeah.
Miss Johnson.
So, in retrospect, how would you describe your leadership style?
It's been a hard question to start with.
No, well, I read a book quite early on, which was it's called something like Head Teacher in the Corridor, or Be a Head Teacher in the Corridor, and it was quite influential. And I thought, that's what I want to be. I don't want to be a head teacher in the office. I'm not very good at very long meetings, listening to everybody's point of view and distilling them down, all the rest of it. But I'm quite good walking along the corridor, ushering kids into classrooms, talking to them, and the same with staff. So it's head teacher from the corridor. That would be the style I would go for. Yeah. And the playground and the ball court and the canteen and the detention room and all those shared spaces. And just going into lessons, but not.
So I think for me, what was interesting was, because you were very visible, and you don't. That wasn't my experience at school. Like, you only ever saw the headmistress if you were in trouble or it was a special assembly. But there was the running joke. I'm not sure if you knew, before Red Bull came out, he was literally everywhere. You would see him on the ground floor,
stress.
and then 23 seconds later, you'd hear him talking to somebody on the next floor up. So it was just like, how is this person?
Were you integral in the design of the school? I always wondered that, because how the school is designed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just have to look up.
Yeah, like it gives you this omnipresent. There was nowhere to hide. Yeah. There was nowhere to hide. Were you integral in the design of the school?
The idea was this idea of a panopticon, which was a kind of a thought experiment by Bentham, I think, which is that and this idea of visible surveillance. You know, if staff can see pupils walking all of the time, walking around the school, their behaviour is far more likely to be moderated and calm, and all the rest of it. And I was thinking about this. Because the first design for the school was just a central street down the middle. And I visited a few street schools, and they all said they were dreadful because you just had no control when all 900, 1,000 children went onto it. It's too big. When I was at the Whitgift shopping centre, this is a true story, and my children weren't behaving as well as they could be, running around and around, but I realised I could see what they were doing, and I could actually then start to control them because it was so visible.
Yeah.
And so the idea of just total visibility was there from the start. Yeah.
Good. Okay. Very interesting, because there was this very much, even when you weren't there, which I don't know if that was a natural thing, because it always felt like you were there.
Yeah, it was.
So I don't know. Okay, so to kind of build on that, you do have, and I'm gonna be harsh. I don't know if I'm gonna be Paxman-esque, but I'm gonna try my best.
Here we go.
I'm gonna build on from my story. So again, my mum told me to go to this interview. I went in there. I was I'll be honest with you, and people who may know me may be able to attest. I was extremely cocky. Yeah, I was extremely. I had this in the bag. I looked around, looked at everybody else. I was gonna smash this, yeah. And you walked into the staff room, and you just I was like, what is this? What's going on? And I'm a bit of a blagger, and I realized like I can blag my way out of most situations. But I remember, I'm not going to get onto the key part, but I remember you speaking about your own education and going to approved school.
Yeah.
And I remember when I heard that, because a lot of my dad went to approved school, and I was like, how is that's the only time I'd ever heard of approved school.
Oh, okay.
My dad had been to approved school, and my
Oh,
my
interesting.
uncles and his friends would tease my dad and say like, "Nah, like you're really bad because you went to approved school. We may have done Borstal, you may have done detention, but do you know how bad you have to be to go to approved school?" So when I'm saying, so hold on, you're a head teacher and you went to an approved school. Give us a little bit about your own educational journey, because for me, that is that unbeknownst, that was my loyalty and commitment. Like, this man has come from his educational journey is like nobody else.
Yeah, it was a funny old day. A few years. I got lost along the way, and but I was I don't know about your dad, because I didn't realise we had much in common when I met him. I wasn't a boarder. I only went there during the day.
Okay.
And the people who were more challenging were there during day and night. So yeah, I went there for 3.5 years, and then I went off. So I broke off I left secondary school, or I moved on, shall we say?
Yeah.
To then go there for a period, and then went to local sixth form college, and then along the way. But it was, it wasn't an easy time, but it was okay. It's quite hard to remember a lot of it now.
Yeah.
Although I do have one or two friends still from those times, and we do kind of look back and go, gosh, it was all a little bit crazy in the 70s, wasn't it, in those schools? But you'd spend most of your time, as a lot of kids do in schools now, just trying to navigate your way around systems and keep yourself out of trouble and not be noticed. And there was quite a bit of that, and quite a bit of trying to be noticed for doing the right thing, to be honest.
Okay.
But it was a very long time ago,
Okay.
if I'm really honest, and I can't really remember very much about it. I was the accidental head teacher. I went there as the deputy head teacher, relatively inexperienced, and then the head teacher left. And that was it. And then for the first year, they had somebody who kind of looked after me and the shop, a wonderful gentleman called David Saunders, who died not so long ago, who couldn't have been more fantastic in kind of helping me take over, I suppose, lumps at a time. So, right, this bit's yours now, this bit's yours, this bit's yours. And he was there for about 2.5 terms.
Oh, wow.
And then he told me I won't be coming in next month. And then the next day we got the letter saying we're going to be inspected.
No way.
Yes. As if somebody might have known. So that would be about 2000, early 2001, late 2000.
What was the outcome?
In those days, I think it was satisfactory with good features, but it came off the list of schools which required concern.
Okay, so when I joined in 2000, when did you join?
2004.
Oh, so you were early into the journey. You were early into the. What was your first impression of joining Lillian Bayliss?
What, the school or Gary?
No, you just your perspective from, because I was going to jump to 2012, which I will do, but give us 2004 Lillian Bayliss. So you were at the old site, weren't you?
No, so they had just moved into the new building when I joined as the TA, and I don't know if I should admit to this on camera. It wasn't my first choice either.
No?
No, I'd actually applied to a school in St. Wreatham.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we won't go there. It had a very homely feel to it. I think that was one of the best parts of the job. It didn't really feel like a them and us with SLT and support staff. Teaching staff were a bit funny though. There was a bit of a divide in the staff room. But I think that whole moral purpose, because what I will say is lots of head teachers do things for league tables or for Ofsted reports or for their own career advancement. But I think what I noticed was you have like this distinguishing feature that it was all for the children. It's
Yeah.
like,
Oh,
I actually
yeah.
don't care about you as adults.
Yeah.
You need to do what you need to do for the children.
100%.
And whilst some people might have found that, irksome, that was always the driving force.
Yeah.
Which was, it was admirable.
Did you 100%? Did you get a lot of? I get the impression you don't really care, but did you get a lot of like pushback from teachers? Because that was the general. Listen, this is about the kids. Like you get paid, you come to work, do what you need to do, and I think kind of in modern teaching that may not be a brilliantly kind of accepted.
No, I think it was
perspective.
pretty rare, and I think a lot of where there was some kickback, it was probably really well managed without me being there by middle and senior managers, in those departmental meetings, and kind of turning the conversation as to what the point of whatever it was we were trying to do was. So if I think back, I'm not really aware of it. Obviously, there was the odd occasion when there was kickback, but we used to spend a lot of time talking to people informally before we introduced anything, on corridors and in meetings. So by the time you came to launch something, you'd hope to have kind of captured the whole school zeitgeist about what to do. And I think one of the many reasons for kind of knowing in 2019, before lockdown, that my kind of time was coming to an end there, was realizing that ability to capture the zeitgeist had kind of gone or was evaporating. And it was time to kind of let other people take over and pick up the baton.
Before we get to that, 2012, 2013. Let's focus it on me, obviously, but not just
You've
me.
done
Your
so
show.
well.
It's your show.
No, the reason I will never forget. It was, I'd probably say maybe having children, married.
Of course,
February 2013. Don't look like that because you have to know what happened. February 2013.
Valentine's Day.
It was Valentine's Day. I will never forget. When I joined in 2012, like there was this whole all schools wanted to be good or outstanding. But there was this the relentless drive on what it meant to be outstanding as a practitioner, in all aspects.
Yeah.
How do I word this now? We know what gave you that drive. In essence, it was about raising the aspirations of the young people. But what made you think that it could genuinely happen? Because I've been to some schools and they spoke about it in these very abstract terms. But when I joined, it was, this is happening. And if you're not part of this happening, you are in the wrong place. Now, with my competitive nature, I'm like, obviously this is after now, you're now my first choice school. It was this movement. It was this wave. It was so powerful. How did you create that and continue that kind of relentless push? It was something else. It was crazy. It was, I've never seen anything like it before.
I don't know. In retrospect, I'm not really sure to that extent, because it wasn't me, it was everybody. And we just kept on turning over every stone to try and find out what was needed and how it would improve things, I guess. I think I was, in 2008, the school was found good. If I remember rightly, in those days, there were 26 judgments.
Oh, wow.
And we were found good in 14 and outstanding in 12. And I remember thinking, it's probably not an unreasonable overall judgment on the school, but how close we were. And so from 2008, that became one driver, I guess. It is possible. The other one was the only way that school in the mid-noughties onwards was going to have parity in the eyes of parents was to get that external validation that this community now had a genuine school of first choice, was not to have great value added in the league tables, although that's really helpful, not to have great attainment, not to have great outcomes, but to also have the one thing which in those days mattered more, which was this badge from Ofsted. And it was giving the community what it deserved and wanted, which was the kind of confidence that if you chose this school as a first choice school, your kid would get a first rate education, because that's what that community deserves. And that's what was always there. And if you kind of go back over time, that's what that community had never had. They had always been told, if you want a first rate education, you should send your child across the river or down south in the borough or east or west. And that wasn't reasonable or fair, and they shouldn't be forgotten.
And do you know what's testament to the amount of children who have come back to work at the school? I've never seen or heard anything like it before. And it's really weird when, students that used to support in the library are now your colleague, but they still would call me miss. It was hilarious. But, I think that really tells the story of how much the children valued what the school did for them, that they would want to come back and work there.
I had a delightful experience just before we broke up. I was at a school in Bermondsey using the meeting room, and then the head came over and said, terribly sorry, Gary, we need to move you out of the room for an hour. Can you work in the back of the staff room, whatever it was I was doing. We've got a visitor who needs the room. So I picked up all my papers, and in walked an ex-student who needed the room for one of their meetings with who was visiting the school, coming to meet them. So that was really nice. Kind of feeling of being bumped by an ex-student who is now working, doing something quite exciting, actually.
Wonderful. I had a question. I did have a question, and it was, why do you think this is something that bothers me, and I'm kind of asking you personally, because again, once I got into the interview, I'm going to kind of go back again to my own personal experience, and I'm happy to say this on camera. I got into the interview, and as I said, I know I smashed the student bit. Bad boy teacher did some poetry. All the kids were engaged, this, that, and the other. My arrogant self, and I'll never ever. Oh gosh, even the feeling of it now. So I'd had some controversy at my last school, and I thought everything was fine. Really, it shouldn't have happened the way it did, but I was a young teacher, and it happened the way it did, and I left with agreed references and so on and so forth. Yeah, cool, whatever. That's the past. So I assumed that everything was fine. So I walked in knowing, as far as I'm concerned, I've got the job, got my references, and you looked at me and you said, listen, I'm looking in the camera at this point. You said, listen, yeah? I'm going to bleep some bits out. Don't chat X, yeah? Tell me what happened at your last school. If I find out you're lying, yeah, I know your head teacher who was there. I'll call him now, and the likelihood is that this is the end of your teaching career.
I did not say that.
No. Words to that effect. That's how it felt. Like, in essence, if you lie to me now, you're done. You're finished.
That's dreadful.
So
I suppose I was.
I looked at Ian, yeah. Thank you. And he just looked back at the chair like this. There was no help. There was no help. And
Poor Ian.
I was backed into the corner, but I felt this man is real. Nobody'd ever approached me like that. And I was like, okay. And I told you exactly what happened. You said, okay, if that's what happened, write it down, so on and so forth, and we're done. The job is yours. Yeah? Where did you get that, like, because you've got this instinct, yeah? This almost shark-like killer instinct, yeah? Where do you think you get that instinct of education, this instinct to kind of hone in on certain points? And once you've got your teeth into it, that's it. That, again, I'm going to focus on that relentlessness.
Don't know.
I'm not scared of.
I just wanted to in your case, because there was something in the reference which made me think there was something underneath it. To get underneath it, so that we're all clear about what and where, and we could all feel safe about moving forward. And it was a good appointment. And
I'm
I
assuming
don't
that's
know
not-
where it comes from. I mean, it probably comes from a complete lack of understanding of social norms. Would be joke.
Have you ever had any other situations, interview type situations, like you don't have to? But I felt that wasn't the first time that you'd locked in on somebody and said, "Listen, cut out the bullshit."
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's what you have to do, isn't it? I mean, it's, to be fair, it's the same when you're meeting anybody at work. You just want to kind of clear away the stuff on the table, close the door. It's like when you meet parents without their child. I mean, you must both have this. You know, it's always a lot easier. You meet the parents beforehand for a few minutes without the child in the room. You can kind of get a shared understanding about what happened, what you think is going to be best to help their child move forward, any accountability on your side or on my side, and how you move forward. And I think it's the same when you work with staff, isn't it? You just want to get straight to it. And probably it's the fact I don't understand the social norms beforehand, which helped. And maybe I was just lucky that people responded well. And then, you know, if the first time you play that card it works, then you do it again, and then you do it again, and then you do it again. But also, I think head teachers, like the boss of any small organisation, are slightly indulged within the organisation if, or the business, if things are going well. Getting it wrong on some occasion in a kind of crass way like that is excused because the whole organisation's going in the right direction.
Yeah.
And maybe the greater sensitivity that we now see in workplaces is a good thing. And some of the crassness that people like me used to use is no longer as acceptable. And that's no bad thing.
Yeah, interesting.
So, from the time you started your headship to the time that you ended it, what would you say was the biggest change?
Gosh. Difficult question. I think the biggest change I've seen, not necessarily in that school, but just generally, is that a lot of people entering teaching now are not doing it as a career for life. They're entering it as this is what I'm going to do for this part of my working life. And that's great, because actually it's getting a lot more people into teaching for a period of time who might not have ever done it, who might have looked at it and thought, I don't want to be doing that for 30 years or 40 years. So I think that change has been pretty significant, because that means that how you run your school in terms of CPD cycles and how you get everybody to have a shared moral purpose has to be thought about again and again and again. And you've seen that even with the government making MPQs free to everybody and making them generally available. It's like, we need to get a highly educated workforce. How can we do that? So that's one big change. I think the second change where we saw was from 2010 onwards, when we saw the kind of lurch towards a more academic curriculum for everybody. And then, of course, what we saw was inclusion fell down because it wasn't an inclusive curriculum for everybody. It was an academic curriculum, which isn't for everybody all of the time. And a lot of people who might do very well in academic curriculum need to actually get through school, and then at 16 or 17 they can then pick it up again, and vice versa. So that's been a huge change. And of course the fall in funding, with austerity, and that's what you can do in a school has become less and less over time. And the increased costs, of national insurance and pension contributions for employers, of paying people a living wage who work in your school, quite rightly. So schools are trying to do more with less. And some of the inclusion work might not need to be done, this is my hypothesis, if the curriculum better met their needs. And I'm very optimistic that the Curriculum and Assessment Review, which starts to publish next year, will start to release a lot of schools from this over-academic curriculum for some pupils, which will then better meet their needs, and therefore we won't get the greater need for inclusion. for some children.
So my next question is for both of you, actually. Do you think that head teachers should still teach?
Yes.
Do I think head teachers should teach? I think, yeah, I think there should be an element where you're involved in the curriculum through teaching, because if you're not, then you're kind of fingers off the pulse. But again, I'm very my whole view of headship is skewed, because I remember because this is the first head teacher I remember seeing teach. I know he's a science teacher. That's his. I don't remember seeing.
He's done RE as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing other head teachers teach.
I think you have Stockholm syndrome, quite frankly.
Clearly. So yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
No, I'd
yes.
agree with you. I think you just have, it's the same reason you need to do a bit of duty and everything else.
Yeah.
And that's what you see. And there's a MAT mainly based in the north, which kind of really insists on all these things around its head teachers, that they do some teaching, that they're not in offices, and senior staff don't have offices. And if you do need to do your emails or some marking during the day as a senior member of staff, just go and do it in the back of a classroom or on a corridor, because that way you can at least supervise some children. And they're really clear about things like that. And I agree. Get out and do something. It's awfully lonely in your office as a head teacher as well, I have to say. I never particularly enjoyed being in it.
That's why your door's always open.
Yeah.
I've never seen kids. Did you ever get the impression that kids were more welcome in the office than adults? Like, 'cause I used to just see, like, if kids would be like, oh, yeah, take a seat, what's the problem? Whereas, like, you'd see adults, like, hovering nervously around it, whereas kids could just walk in, sir, this teacher, and it was, yeah, right, cool. But staff, oh my goodness.
Not all staff.
I think I would doorstep staff. They didn't need to come and find me, or they would find me in the corridor. But yeah, you've got to. It's what you see in all schools. The pupils have to have somewhere just to sit down for 5 minutes, and then they would go and see the wonderful pastoral team who would actually sort their problem out. I wouldn't. I would very rarely be able to sort out their problem. I didn't have the skills to do that, but I could get them off the corridor and give them a place just to sit down for a few minutes and lower their own.
You said 2019. It's very introspective. You weren't able to capture the kind of feeling, the zeitgeist of the vibe of the school. How did that feel? Like after so many years of knowing the you were feeling that I'm kind of half a step out. How did that feel? That acknowledgement or realization?
Well, the flow is interrupted obviously by lockdown.
Yeah.
Both we had 2 periods of lockdown, didn't we? So that kind of muddles your memory. I think it muddles everybody's memory of those 2 years of life, in inverted commas, and what happened.
Excuse me.
Well, it made me feel I needed to buy the TES, if I'm really honest. It's like I need to start thinking about what I'm going to do next. But I was also acutely aware that I didn't quite know what it was I wanted to do. So I suppose I felt a little bit lost, to be honest. And, there was really good senior and middles. The whole staff team was really strong, really, but relatively new senior and middle managers in many positions. And I suppose I just had to trust them more than I might have done in the past to kind of define what it was that they were doing. And at the time, some of the decisions I really supported and others I would question. But to be fair, most of those decisions I saw over time were really great decisions that they were making. But at the time, they probably had to put up with too much inquiry from me as to why they were doing it. But you could see over time how it was really helping to shape a new way forward for the school, because the school had to be something different. Young people coming into school were fundamentally different than they were in 1999. Most of them have been born or grown up during austerity. people have become far more active socially, both the social media, far greater instance of children needing support through CAMS or similar services. And that's what most of the staff understood far better than me. And they needed, the children needed that. So I think I probably would have left during that academic year if COVID hadn't interrupted it.
Okay.
But I didn't, because I couldn't. And then we came back, and then that was it. It was time to go on. And kind of, I suppose once I'd made a decision, it was all very, very rapid.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the final kind of making the decision, I must have driven people crazy. In fact, I know I did, both at work, the people I spoke to about it, and at home, and a few friends. It's like, and some of them must have just, it's like, just give me the piece of paper. I'll write it. Just go. I can't bear you agonizing. Oh, you had a good day. Oh, you had a bad day. And in the truth be told, I just wrote it one afternoon.
I remember.
In detention. I had a few children at the end of the day for the detention, wrote my letter, went into senior leadership team, handed them the letter.
That was it.
And that was it. Yeah.
20 plus years.
Yeah, that was it.
So,
and I don't think anybody believed me outside of school for a few days. Oh no, you haven't, have you? Oh, you've been talking about it constantly. So yeah.
If you were to do it all again, is there anything that you would do differently?
Yeah, probably. I think we probably could have been more inclusive at this, in the initial few years, and probably done a bit more to try and support some children who are really struggling with school.
Okay.
And very dysregulated inside the school. I'm not quite sure what it was, but that's what makes me kind of think again and again. And I think there's a few staff that we could have helped some more to kind of improve their teaching. And again, I'm not quite sure what it was we could have done. And some other, some support staff. So yeah, I think we could have.
Not me, obviously.
Yeah. But I think we could have done more to help people in the building, staff or students, who are finding things difficult. Yeah.
I would then say.
Sorry, just to finish that.
Sorry.
But there was always this tension between the capacity you had and how much capacity you invested in individuals against the whole. And that was a really difficult balance.
Okay.
And it still is for schools, as we see. And you see it, you both see it, don't you, in your sectors? Yeah. And how you do that.
So when you made the decision, you say you had no clue what you were going to go into, or did you have an inkling that maybe I could go into a bit of this? I'd had some conversations here.
No, I planned it very badly. I'd had one interview in early 2020 where they quite rightly didn't give me the job. Doesn't really matter what. Working in a trust. And so I realised I had to make the decision to leave before I could think about what to do next.
Okay.
Because whenever I looked at something, I was just comparing it to what I was doing, which was so it was never going to be as great as what I was lucky enough to be doing then. I then thought about doing temporary headship, went along to look at a couple of schools where temporary heads were needed, and realised I probably couldn't do that anymore to the standard that was required, and that I'd end up staying at the schools if I was good enough to stay. So I was just moving from one job to another with the same inherent problems of kind of being a yard behind the zeitgeist, if not 10 yards. So I just started buying the TES, to be honest, and spent October half term. I gave myself 6 weeks off and then spent October half term knocking out application forms.
Wow.
And it's hard, when you've been somewhere for a long time, because I did an 18-year stint there. But you know, when you leave, having been somewhere for so long, it's just kind of like, well, what do I do? Not what do I do now, but where do I go now? Because it's a very unique place to work.
Well, when you've done a long stretch in anything or
Yeah.
done a similar thing in different schools, when you've done a long stretch, you don't quite understand, I think, what your market value is and what other schools might use you for, and where where your kind of your niche is. So I had no understanding what else I could do really, and some of my early job applications made that really clear. You know, I don't have those skill set, do I? You know, or I had two interviews, and I didn't get the jobs, but I clearly wasn't suited for them either. You know, and it's like, all right, so I don't have that skill set, and I don't have that skill set. You know,
So
that's not me.
It took you a while to figure out where your niche was.
Well, I was very lucky that I did some school improvement advisory work in a number of local authorities, and I did a stretch as an HMI for a year. That was great, just getting into other schools. I really enjoyed that actually. And then this job came up, which I'm in now, whereby I support a small group of schools as a school improvement advisor, essentially, so I can use the experience I've got to try and help them reflect on their next priorities as head teachers. But I'm also acutely aware that you only have a limited shelf life once you come out of headship to advise other head teachers, and I think it's 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And I think after that, you're telling them things which are so out of date.
Yeah.
Or I think I will be, that I need to then find something else to do.
Wow. So this
Not
is
quite sure what.
Yeah, this is interesting. The reason it's interesting because maybe a lot of our listeners are teachers or early into senior leadership, whereas you're now speaking senior leadership, headship, and then the stages,
But it's also about, I mean, because you've come from mainstream to the AP sector, thinking about, so how many years is it when you no longer have, you'll always be great in the classroom, but your experience of teaching GCSE English, suddenly it's like, that was 5-6 years ago since I last took an exam class, all the way through, from year 7 to 11, and then kind of saw them onto an A-level course. And that you start to have to refresh.
Really think,
and I think that's quite difficult to do.
Yeah, no, it is something I'm very, very aware of, and I think last year doing the more education stuff, I wasn't teaching. I was getting other teachers to teach, and it got to the stage I wasn't teaching in the AP. I wasn't teaching in my own business. How sharp am I really? How good am I? So I've had to start kind of dipping my toe and taking the GCSE. Obviously,
that's good.
Obviously, I take the top set best.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I'll top set year 11 class. But yeah, no, you're very, very, very right. Yeah.
But it's also thinking about, do I need to as well? I mean, you're quite young in your career, so probably you need to keep that going. But you wouldn't want me to teach a GCSE science class. I haven't taught one for a number of years. Not since
Right.
If I say 3 prime ministers ago, it sounds quite recent, doesn't it? But,
last week.
Last week, yeah. But not for some time.
I'd want to. Was there any more?
I've just got one final question.
No, go ahead.
Would you ever write a book?
I thought about it, but it's not my story. It's a story of the school, and it's a story of the young people within the school. It's not my story. So no, I don't want to do that. I've decided.
It'd be a good book, though. It would be.
Yeah.
It would be.
That's kind of you. I think there's enough hero head teacher books out there. I don't really want to add to the pile. I don't think there's a big readership. I think, the story is the young people who've come through the school and their aspirations have been met and they've gone on to do the things they want to do, as a career as a citizen, as a member of their family and the community. And, you know, you see some of them like I do on LinkedIn, for example. You see some of them pop up in the media and you think, gosh, that's fantastic what you're doing. And I'm so glad to have kind of been a tiny little bit of you being able to carry on having all that hope and enthusiasm for your own life, your friends, family, your community. It's fantastic to see.
I think where it'd be important, and it's a word you've said continually, is this the community aspect.
Yeah.
It being like, I think the term is a servant leader.
That's it.
Where you have served the community, and you've been very focused on raising the aspirations and the life chances. It's a word, a phrase that's used very often. Oh, you changed the life chances of these kids.
Transforming, I think you'll find it was.
Is that
It
was?
was,
Oh yeah,
yeah.
was that transform the life chances?
Yes.
Of
all our students.
Yes. Yeah, it's a kind of generic phrase that's used, but I think you can actually show the data during your tenure for how you've been able to through being a servant leader. So yeah, I want to thank you very much for taking the time.
That's okay.
To our anniversary edition. It could only be one person who we had here for our anniversary edition.
It's very kind of you both.
So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the leadership, guidance you've offered us, and your work is, as you said, those times where you're kicked out of a boardroom meeting for one of your former students who you changed their life. So yeah.
She was always going to be successful, but yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. We're going to wrap up here today with Mr. Phillips. We'll probably keep him probably get him on for another episode. One of our questions. It'd be good to see, one of our Q&A sessions. So yes, thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Remember, do all that good stuff. Share, subscribe, comment, especially share. We need more sharing. We need way more sharing. So make sure you do all that good YouTube stuff. Yeah, we'll see you on the next episode.